and welcome to the Sermon Sound Waves on the Space Coast podcast. I'm Pastor Alisha, pastor of discipleship at Advent Lutheran Church in Melbourne, Florida. Whenever I share a message with the congregation, you'll be able to listen to it right here on this podcast. If you don't want to miss out on the new sermons, please subscribe. I hope you'll also consider sharing this podcast with your friends. After all of us need to hear the good news of the love of Jesus Christ. Thanks for listening, and without further ado, here is Sermon Sound Waves on the Space Coast.
The Holy Gospel according to John. Jesus said to those who had believed in him, "If you continue in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free." They answered him, "We are descendants of Abraham and have never been slaves to anyone. What do you mean by saying you will be made free?" Jesus answered them, "Very truly I tell you, everyone who commits sin is a slave to sin. The slave does not have a permanent place in the household. The son has a place there forever. So if the Son makes you free, you will be free indeed." The Gospel of the Lord. You may be seated. All right, so as Pastor Jeremy said, we're switching it up a little bit in terms of focusing more as we look at the Reformation, as we look at the changes that Martin Luther made. And he called us to be a church that is constantly reforming, constantly changing, being made better by new things that we learn. And so, in the spirit of that, we have put together something very special for the kids, which is the worship toolbox. Now, I asked the kids to decorate these, and they turned out great. There are no two designs that are the same. They all look different. They all are wonderfully unique. But each of these boxes has the same pieces of things inside of them. So inside this box are all of the tools that the kids will need to follow along and to participate in worship in a way that they can understand. Because kids have a lot of energy. I don't know if you knew that or not. And sometimes it's hard for them to pay attention. And a lot of times when we hear kids in church, it can be easy to want them to be a little quieter, right? Because, I want this worship experience to be solemn. But it's a good reminder for us that the kids are part of worship too. That the kids, even in their noise, that can be a wonderful blessing from God, because it means they're here with us and they are learning in their life of faith. So to encourage that, we have these toolboxes with tools for them to participate in worship. So there is a variety of items, and I'm just going to go down the list here to show you kind of what's inside of these. And there's also directions on one side and then a list of supplies on the other. So the first thing on the list is a candle. And this is something that the kids can turn on or light at the beginning of service. So when they see them light the candles, or they see that the candles are lit, the kids can turn on their candles and keep it lit throughout worship, which will help them pay attention to when we light the candles, as well as when the candles go out at the end. So these will remain lit throughout the service. And then the second thing is this cross, which is in the form of something called a poppet, which is like a more advanced version of the bubble wrap that you might have played with when you were younger, or now. I might be guilty of that myself. But basically it's like eternal bubble wrap, and it makes this nice popping noise when you push it on the other side. So it's quite fun to play with, but in addition, it's shaped like a cross. And I have charged the kids at the 9 o'clock service that when they have these crosses, they hold them when we say prayers. And they remember who it is we're talking to. We're talking to Jesus, and this cross is a reminder of that. It also gives them something to do with their hands, which is often something that doesn't happen. So then comes One of my favorite items in the box, and if you follow us on social media, you saw that I had these flags ahead of time and was waving them around. It's quite fun. These little banners that are so colorful, each one is a different size and color, and these banners are for the kids to wave during the songs, so that anytime they are singing, there's a visual piece to the music, which is so fun. It adds the movement, and it adds more senses to the song. So there's all sorts of things that they can do with it. They can swirl it or twist it side to side. It's lots of fun. I like to play with these. So we have this lovely little banner for them to wave. There's more inside of here, of course. So then there's the one that the kids at the 9 o'clock were all very interested in. Of course, they were all very interested in it. And the office the other day said we sounded kind of like Christmas time because I was putting the kits together. And these bells are actually a wristband that the kids can put on. And they can wear this throughout the service, but I encourage them to put it on right before the passing of the peace. Because as they pass the peace and shake people's hands, there's the bells. And then during the music, they can also play these as the banners wave. And this adds another of the 5 senses, but also involves them in a way that they know they can pass the peace too. This isn't something that just the grown-ups do. The kids get to do this with the grown-ups and pass that peace in a way that we can hear God's peace being spread, not just through the words, not just through the actions, but through the sound of these bells. There is also inside of these kits, each one has a lovely little finger puppet friend. And this is the kids' worship buddy. This little finger puppet is in the box, in the toolbox, as a tool for the kids to remember that we don't come to worship alone. That worship is about coming together as a community of God. So they aren't by themselves. Even when they feel lonely, they have their little worship buddy to play with them, to participate, to sing and dance along with the music. It's just an extra tool to remember that no one worships alone. And then we have crayons, because of course coloring is so much fun, and oftentimes you'll see tool bags with the crayons in them for the kids to color, but here we're being intentional about what the kids are coloring. So along with the crayons comes these little blank pieces of paper that are mostly blank, but in the top right corner is my offering, and this is for the kids to draw a picture of anything they heard in worship, anything they saw, or something they're thinking about, and then during the offering time they can drop this in the offering plate so that they remember that they have things to give to God as well. It's not always about money. It's not always about the grown-ups putting things in there. The kids are encouraged to put their own offering in, to participate in this part of worship. And then we have a couple of things that the kids will get to take home with them every week. The first being stickers, because who doesn't love stickers, right? So these little stickers will be sent home with the kids so they can remember what they heard in church that day. Now, this is to encourage them to share with others or keep for themselves as a reminder of what they heard, because every time they see this sticker, they're going to know that it came from the church. Or if they take it home and one of their relatives comes over and says, "Oh, those are really cool stickers. Where did you get those?" The kids can say, "I got them in church." So we encourage them to take a sheet of stickers home with them. And then the last piece of this toolbox is a coloring page, which the kids will also get to take home and color at home, because we want to encourage them to be thinking about the worship throughout the week, to be thinking about the things that we do, because the things we do in worship are intentional. The things we do have a purpose, and this is to teach the kids the tools they need to participate in worship at an age-appropriate level. But of course, there is no age limit on these boxes. So I'm just saying they're going to be out for all worship services. If one day you want to pick one up and use it, you are certainly welcome to do so. There's directions on one side and then a supplies list on the other, so you always know what goes in the box and what each thing is used for, so you don't have to just remember off the top of your head. And then we ask the kids, make sure you put your candle out at the end. But other than that, these are the tools for the kids to participate in worship, to be making noise, to be participating in that way. Because I think sometimes we forget it's not all about this solemnity. This church is a very serious thing. Church is a place where we come to worship a God who is beyond anything we can imagine, and a God who tells kids they are welcome. And that was the final piece of the children's message this morning. Instead of reading the regular gospel, we invited the kids to come up because they're usually not here for the readings. And during that time, we read them a story from the children's story Bible. And this was their gospel reading, was a story with pictures that tells them the story of Jesus welcoming children to him, and how Jesus was inviting and welcoming and said that we should be childlike because that is what the kingdom of God is like. So be thinking about that. Be thinking about the ways in which sometimes things that seem so inconvenient or noisy are actually exactly what God is calling us to do. And that is why we're so excited to have these toolboxes. They're going to be out at worship starting next Sunday. And so the kids will be starting to use them as of next Sunday. And that's all.
Thanks again for listening. We hope that today's message has given you something to think about and given you hope in the promise that God loves you. Remember that you are God's beloved child, and nothing can ever take that away. To learn more about Advent Lutheran Church and its ministries, visit adventbrevard.org. If you'd like to support this podcast or any of the many amazing ministries at Advent, please visit our website's giving page. Thanks again for tuning in to today's Sermon Soundwaves on the Space Coast podcast.